voters back home that President Trump is the same fierce defender of Israel as candidate Trump. Window dressing on an ally that offers little clarity when it comes to policy. And here is what both leaders said today about the two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians. Take a listen.
So I'm looking at two-state and one state, and I like the one that both parties like. I'm very happy with the one that both parties like. I can live with either one. I thought for a while the two-state looked like it may be the easier of the two. But honestly, if Bibi and if the Palestinians, if Israel and the Palestinians are happy, I'm happy with the one they like the best.
I believe that the great opportunity for peace comes from a regional approach, from involving our newfound Arab partners in the pursuit of a broader peace and peace with the Palestinians. And I greatly look forward to discussing this in detail with you, Mr. President, because I think that if we work together, we have a shot.
All right, let's look into what was said today. And to do that, I'm joined now from Princeton University in the U.S. by Daniel Kurtzer. He was the U.S. ambassador to Israel under President George W. Bush. He also served as ambassador to Egypt during the term of President Bill Clinton. Ambassador, welcome to the day. It's good to have you with us. How much window dressing did we see today?
Well, interestingly, Netanyahu's comments were clearly directed at his own cabinet and at the Israeli people, whereas Trump, a bit unusually, was thinking out loud about moving the peace process forward. Netanyahu repeated old ideas about preconditions for a state, gave no ground on the question of settlements. I think he, unfortunately, opened up prematurely the idea of a regional approach, which probably should have been pursued quietly before it was made public. Mr. Trump, on the other hand, did advise Mr. Netanyahu in front of the cameras to cut back on settlements and indicated that his goal is peace, even if there may be different options to get there.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the settlements. We know that during the campaign last year, Donald Trump came out for the settlement policy. Take a listen to what he said today.
As far as settlements, I'd like to see you hold back on settlements for a little bit. We'll work something out, but I would like to see a deal be made. I think a deal will be made. It might be a bigger and better deal than people in this room even understand. That's a possibility. So let's see what we do.
Let's try it.
Doesn't sound too optimistic, but that's he's a good negotiator.
That's the art of the deal.
I also want to thank...
Yeah, the art of which deal, that's the question. Ambassador, can you tell us tonight, is the Trump Mideast policy, is there a clear one to you?
No, as with most other aspects of this administration, there is no clear policy, and frankly, there's no clear policy process. You have upheaval in the National Security Council, which would normally lead the policy process through the interagency system, and that's not working now with Michael Flynn having resigned. Rex Tillerson just became Secretary of State. So the president, between tweets and these public comments, is offering a little bit of a glimpse into what he's thinking, but there's no policy yet. And I think if, in fact, if the president wants his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to become the special envoy, they ought to, roll up their sleeves and get to work. They have a lot of homework to study, and it's a very tall hill to climb right now.
Yeah, you mentioned his son-in-law. What about the president's pick for U.S. ambassador to Israel, David Friedman? How strange is that decision to you?
It's very strange and almost incomprehensible. You want an ambassador who can do three things. Number one, represent the president's policy, and I'm sure Friedman would argue that he can do that. But you also need an ambassador who can reflect the variety of opinion within the United States to the country where he's going to be going, and a person who can reflect the variety of opinion within the country where he's been stationed. And Friedman has proven that he's a very divisive candidate who appeals only to the extreme right wing in the United States and the extreme right wing in Israel. He even has alienated major sections of the American Jewish community with name calling. So it's a very unusual appointment and one that I don't think is going to help Trump or Kushner advance the agenda.
What about what we've been seeing this week, the Michael Flynn resignation? How detrimental will that be to Israeli-U.S. ties?
Well, it's terribly detrimental for an administration that hasn't yet found its footing. What you want in the first instance is a pretty easy confirmation process for your cabinet nominees. And while that's happening, you want your national security structure to be set up. It wasn't so easy to get the cabinet nominees through, and now you have this upheaval within the National Security Council. On the other hand, Flynn himself was a very divisive and extreme character. And so in some ways, even though it will set back the organization of the National Security Council, if Trump brings in a more moderate organizer, one who can bring the agencies to think together and to hammer out policy, it may actually be beneficial that they got rid of Flynn early on rather than later.
Although we have to say, Michael Flynn, he was really the biggest hawk on Iran in the Oval Office with this administration, and now he's gone. I'm wondering what Mr. Netanyahu is going to do now. I want to play a soundbite for you of what was said today at their meeting about Iran. Take a listen.
The security challenges faced by Israel are enormous, including the threat of Iran's nuclear ambitions, which I've talked a lot about. One of the worst deals I've ever seen is the Iran deal. My administration has already imposed new sanctions on Iran, and I will do more to prevent Iran from ever developing, I mean ever, a nuclear weapon.
Ambassador, before we let you go, I want to ask you about both of these leaders and how they click with each other. Do you think they understand each other better due to the fact that both of them are not strangers to suspicions and accusations of unethical practices?
Look, I think we're in the first quarter of a football game or the first inning of a baseball game, and both of them had a very strong reason to portray a relationship that was built on a solid foundation. They've known each other for a while. They both did not like Barack Obama. Netanyahu had a very toxic relationship with President Obama. So in this first meeting, it was very important for both of them to get along and to show both the people of America and of Israel that they could do that. But you have very strong-willed leaders on both sides. Donald Trump doesn't like to be lectured, and he heard a lecture today. Now, Netanyahu can get away with it because it's a first meeting, and he was talking mostly to his own people. But imagine what happens if they're sitting in the Oval Office and Netanyahu treats Trump to a long lecture about Jewish history or anti-Semitism. Trump won't like that, and it'll lead to problems. So I'm not sure that the personal relationship here is going to be sustained over time. They may find some common strategic interests, but it'll be interesting to watch these two self-centered, in some way narcissistic personalities, how they get along in a bilateral relationship.
Former ambassador to Israel for the United States, Mr. Daniel Kurtzer. Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us tonight on The Day. We appreciate it.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Pay up because we are fed up. That